What's up, Rasputin Tribe? This is Rasputin125 back for yet another great reaction. This is Absolute Mad Lads Rasputin. That's the way he says it anyway. I know that from the first part. This is part 2. If you haven't seen the first part, don't watch this one. Go back and watch the first part and come back and watch this one. Yeah. This is a requested video, and if you'd like me to react to any other video, just leave it in the comment section down below, and I'll get to it as soon as I can. I'll be leaving links in the description down below for this video and its channel, so be sure to check out my links as well, yeah? Okay. And I have put some exclusive videos on Bitchute, ones that were blocked on YouTube. And now on Bitchute, a couple of them are on Bitchute, and I'll be putting more on. So yeah. I have to edit them because they've changed a little bit since, since I shot them last. Put a couple on that weren't edited, re-edited, so oh well. Let's jump in.
Upon a female maid in the royal palace, but she also shared the same fate as the nanny, and she was fired for bringing down Rasputin's image and reputation. All of this was pretty much run-of-the-mill stuff when it came to Rasputin, but he did also get himself involved in other shady activities which saw him making huge personal gains. Rasputin would make sure that ministerial and religious appointments were only given to people who were loyal to him, and he would also get rid of ministers who publicly opposed him. Rasputin would also take bribes from various nobles or aristocrats in order to get them an audience with the Tsar. When World War I began, Rasputin even accepted bribes of 2,000 rubles from soldiers who wanted to avoid fighting on the Eastern Front. It's been debated by historians as to how much influence Rasputin actually had over the decisions made by the Tsar and his wife. But given that the Empress always made sure that Rasputin was saved from any scandal and that he was always allowed to return to the capital unharmed, meant that Rasputin definitely held some importance within the royal family.
Wow.
This can even be seen when Rasputin got into a fight with a bishop and a monk when they confronted him over the whole having orgies in churches thing. Instead of this being a clear warning to the Tsar about Rasputin's extreme behaviour, the Tsar instead removed the bishop from his position. What? Now this was actually illegal for him to do without calling for a trial first. But despite this, the Tsar had both men removed from St. Petersburg and assigned them to minor roles in faraway monasteries. The royals would also enact harsh censorship rules and fines against any newspaper or author who had written any negative material about Rasputin. They would also turn a completely blind eye to any reports about any of Rasputin's misdeeds, even from people as prominent as the Russian Prime Minister himself. In one case, the police had arrested Rasputin for disorderly conduct, and the commander of the palace guard had simply forwarded this message to the Tsar's desk, and the commander, who had absolutely nothing to do with the arrest or the report, was fired simply for passing on a message to the royal family.
Whoa, 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 whoa. They fired him. They shot the messenger, pretty much. Yeah? What? That just stupid, man. What the hell?
And the commander of the palace guard had simply forwarded this message to the Tsar's desk. And the commander, who had absolutely nothing to do with the arrest or the report, was fired simply for passing on a message to the royal family. This was mostly the responsibility of the Empress, as she would be the one to always convince the Tsar to bring Rasputin back on the rare instances that he was actually kicked out of St. Petersburg. She would always claim that any negative reports on Rasputin were the product of jealous aristocrats who wanted rid of him. Of course, the reason why they were so adamant about keeping Rasputin around was because he was the only man able to treat their son. The big problem was that outside of a small circle of people within the royal family, nobody in Russia actually knew about Alexei's medical condition. Nobody knew about his haemophilia or the importance of Rasputin's treatment in keeping him alive. And I believe that the reason that they kept this secret is you can't have an heir to the throne looking weak.
Yes.
So basically, as Rasputin's behaviour got worse and his influence growing despite this, most people believed that Rasputin was using some kind of dark magic to manipulate the royal family. These tensions reached their absolute peak when the Tsar left the capital and...
You have to admit though, you can understand why they would think that. You just have to look at him. He looks creepy as hell. He looks like a right creeper. Of course you're gonna think there's something weird about him. Something dark about him. And there's many dark things about him.
The reason that they kept this secret is you can't have an heir to the throne looking weak. So basically, as Rasputin's behaviour got worse and his influence growing despite this, most people believed that Rasputin was using some kind of dark magic to manipulate the royal family.
Yes.
These tensions reached their absolute peak when the Tsar left the capital in 1915 to personally oversee his army's progress on the Eastern Front. This left the Empress completely in charge of domestic affairs, and at this point, she was believed by most of the aristocracy to simply be a pawn for Rasputin. The aristocracy increasingly began to believe that the only way to save Russia and win the war was to get Rasputin out of the picture forever. There had already been a major attempt on Rasputin's life in 1914 when a follower of one of Rasputin's major religious rivals had attempted to stab him to death. Miraculously, Rasputin managed to survive this attack, though the attack did take a massive toll on his health. It was clear that if an assassination attempt was to be successful, it would need to be well planned and executed by the nobility themselves. The men who finally decided to do this were the Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, the Tsar's first cousin, and Prince Felix Yusupov, who was related to the Tsar by marriage to his niece. Before they could start planning the assassination, the conspirators first needed information about Rasputin's future plans and movements. Yusupov volunteered to make first contact and gain Rasputin's trust under the guise of needing spiritual healing. Yusupov would meet with Rasputin on a near weekly basis, noticing that Rasputin was becoming more and more delusional with each visit. Rasputin would repeatedly brag about how easy it was for him to get the Tsar and his wife to do whatever he wanted, and he revealed that he was trying to convince the Tsar to completely dissolve the Duma, as he believed it to be a threat to his own power. Yusupov's cause for alarm grew even more when he learned that Rasputin was thoroughly against the war with Germany. Rasputin also revealed that he wanted the Duma abolished so that the Tsar could declare a state of emergency, so that the Tsar could then use his executive powers to arrange a peace treaty and end the war. We take it for granted that Russia's entry into World War I became unpopular by 1917, but by 1916 it was actually one of the most publicly popular decisions the Tsar had made. So what Rasputin said was just more evidence to Yusupov that Rasputin was acting against Russia's interests.
Yes.
Importantly for Yusupov and his plans for the assassination, Rasputin identified the members of government who were unconditionally loyal to him. He even offered to make Yusupov a minister himself, which, though he declined, Yusupov took this as a useful indicator to know that he had gained Rasputin's complete trust. After reporting back what he had learned to his fellow conspirators, they began the process of amassing support from prominent members of the government and planning out the assassination in detail. Wow. They ruled out a public assassination or killing him in his flat, as this would open them up to prosecution by the Empress, and it may have caused a riot in the city, which would go against their intention of bringing stability to the empire. They agreed that Yusupov would invite Rasputin over to his estate under the pretense of Yusupov's wife requiring his treatment. During his visit, Yusupov would feed Rasputin food laced with cyanide, which would hopefully kill him. It was agreed that some of the conspirators would remain nearby so they could help Yusupov if the plan went south. With the plan agreed, Yusupov arranged for Rasputin to visit his estate on the 29th of December 1916. Yusupov had also made sure that his wife took a holiday in the Crimea so that Rasputin definitely wouldn't be getting his hands on her. Before Rasputin's visit, Yusupov decided to convert his cellar into a guest room. This was so the murder would be out of sight from any of his servants, and it would also deprive Rasputin of any escape routes in the event of a struggle. Yusupov also got a doctor to lace some of Rasputin's favourite cakes, wine and tea with cyanide. He had to do this moments before he arrived, otherwise the poison wouldn't be potent enough to kill him. The rest of the conspirators would be upstairs playing music to give the impression that Yusupov's wife was entertaining guests prior to meeting Rasputin. This was also so Yusupov had some background noise to help calm his nerves. So with everything in place, Yusupov collected Rasputin at around midnight and brought him down into the converted cellar. Rasputin initially refused to eat anything for over an hour, which really got Yusupov sweating.
Yeah.
Yusupov was actually so nervous that when Rasputin finally asked for some tea and cakes, Yusupov handed him some biscuits that weren't even poisoned. But eventually, Rasputin had actually eaten all of the food, including the poisoned food.
Oh.
However, apart from feeling and looking a bit tired, Rasputin showed absolutely no signs of becoming sick due to the poison.
Probably because, what was it, he said he had to lace it moments before he got there, otherwise it wouldn't be potent enough. So that's what's happened. He's waited too long to eat, and the cyanide is no longer as effective. Yeah? That's crazy. It's like he knew somehow, you know? Like somewhere inside of him, like unconsciously said, no, don't eat it just yet. Don't eat it just yet, just in case.
Yusupov was actually so nervous that when Rasputin finally asked for some tea and cakes, Yusupov handed him some biscuits that weren't even poisoned. But eventually, Rasputin had actually eaten all of the food, including the poisoned food. However, apart from feeling and looking a bit tired, Rasputin showed absolutely no signs of becoming sick due to the poison. The conspirators were becoming incredibly impatient at this point and began making some noise upstairs. Yusupov excused himself, explaining to Rasputin that his wife's guests were probably leaving and he wanted to take the opportunity to see them off home. When Yusupov got upstairs, he was panicking and he told his co-conspirators about what had happened. Rasputin had actually eaten all of the poisoned food, yet he was absolutely fine. So Yusupov decided to take a revolver down to the basement and finish the job. When Yusupov returned to the cellar, Rasputin was remarking at the beauty of a decorative crucifix that Yusupov had placed on top of a wine cabinet. Steeling himself for the kill, Yusupov told Rasputin, "You'd far better look at the crucifix and say a prayer." Upon seeing Yusupov pointing a gun at him, Rasputin initially hesitated, but finally began to kneel down, with his head lowered and his hands raised. Yusupov silently raised his revolver and aimed at the one place he knew would kill Rasputin instantly: the heart. And after finally steadying his hand and his nerves, Yusupov let off a single round. Rasputin let out a bellowing cry, and after a moment of writhing around on the floor, he had finally collapsed and ceased to move. Yusupov had finally done it.
Nope. 2 words for you. Double tap. Double tap, double tap, double tap. Shot him in the heart. I shoot him in the head. Done. Done. He's dead. Double tap. Every time. The saying.
His revolver and aimed at the one place he knew would kill Rasputin instantly: the heart. And after finally steadying his hand and his nerves, Yusupov let off a single round. Rasputin let out a bellowing cry, and after a moment of writhing around on the floor, he had finally collapsed and ceased to move. Yusupov had finally done it. He had killed Rasputin and saved Russia. After the doctor had checked Rasputin's body and confirmed his death, the conspirators had agreed that 3 of them should drive back over to Rasputin's flat, with one of them dressed in some monk's clothing. This was to simulate dropping Rasputin off back at his flat, just in case they were followed by the secret police. Yusupov and a fellow conspirator would wait for their return, and then they would dump Rasputin's body in a nearby river. Whilst waiting on their return, however, Yusupov had developed a great sense of unease and wanted to check back on Rasputin's body. After descending down the stairs, he found Rasputin on the floor, untouched, since being inspected by the doctor. Suddenly, Rasputin's eyes flicked open and he leapt upon Yusupov, screaming and attempting to strangle him. Yusupov managed to finally shake Rasputin off and rushed upstairs, shouting for help. After returning to the cellar, Yusupov realised that Rasputin had broken through one of the doors leading into the courtyard, so Yusupov's accomplice began to chase Rasputin down, and he took out his own revolver and shot Rasputin another 4 times, this time killing him for good. The other conspirators had finally returned, and after loading Rasputin's body into their car, they threw his remains into the Neva River at Petrovsky Island. When news of the assassination went public, Yusupov and his fellow conspirators managed to avoid official prosecution, though the Empress made sure to keep all of them under house arrest, as although she couldn't prove it, she had a feeling that they were behind it. Regardless, the immediate reaction from the aristocracy and the people of Russia alike was a sense of celebration. They genuinely believed that the main influence over the Tsar's poor decision-making was gone, and that things would only get better from here. Rasputin's frozen body was eventually recovered from the Neva River, and it was buried shortly afterwards. However, the authorities then dug his body back up and cremated it. Some say that they did this out of fear that Rasputin was going to rise from the dead and seek vengeance against them. There are many different stories and theories around Rasputin's death. Some say that he was also mercilessly beaten with chains. Some say that he was given arsenic as well as the cyanide. And some people also say that his body was wrapped in a rug before being thrown into the river.
Yeah, I heard all that. I was beaten with chains, wrapped in a rug. I thought all that was true. Apparently not. Oh.
Eventually recovered from the Neva River, and it was buried shortly afterwards. However, the authorities then dug his body back up and cremated it. Some say that they did this out of fear that Rasputin was going to rise from the dead and seek vengeance against them. There are many different stories and theories around Rasputin's death. Some say that he was also mercilessly beaten with chains. Some say that he was given arsenic as well as the cyanide. And some people also say that his body was wrapped in a rug before being thrown into the river. And after his body was recovered, there were claw marks inside the rug, showing that he was still alive. Some people have also said that when Rasputin's body was burned, it sat upright in the fire, causing everyone to run away screaming. Now, that is possible, as Russia's cold winters slow down the decomposition of bodies, so Rasputin's muscles would have still been intact, and when you burn muscles, they contract, which makes bodies sit upright. But there is nothing to confirm that any of these things actually happened. Although Rasputin was a very hard man to kill,
Yes.
a lot of the stories around his death have been greatly exaggerated. But after all of that, you would think that that would be the end of Rasputin's influence over the royal family. But even after his death, he had one last trick to play. Before he died, he had made the following prophecy to the Tsar and his wife. If one of your relations brings upon my death, then none of your family will remain alive for more than 2 years. They will all be killed by the Russian people. Tell your relatives that I have already paid for them in my blood. I shall be killed. I am no longer among the living. This was obviously just a scare tactic that Rasputin used at the time to frighten the royal family into protecting him. But his prophecy was still scarily accurate. The Tsar abdicated the throne in February of 1917, and then he and his entire family were slaughtered by the Bolsheviks in 1918.
Yeah.
Some people would attribute this to Rasputin actually having magic powers, but it can be easily explained if you simply look at what was going on at the time.
Yeah.
With Rasputin gone, and Russia's performance in the war getting worse day by day, the people had no other scapegoat to blame this on except the Tsar himself. So, ironically, in getting rid of Rasputin, the aristocrats didn't actually save Russia, but probably accelerated its collapse due to the people completely losing faith in the monarchy. This resulted in the Bolshevik Revolution and the entire royal family being slaughtered by the Bolsheviks and communism taking over Russia. Out of the frying pan, into the fire. I'm not saying that the royal family were great, but they were certainly a lot better than famine or getting thrown into the gulag because you farted after 6 PM. In general, many of Rasputin's mystical acts have either been greatly exaggerated or can at least be rationally explained. These exaggerations were widely spread due to the propaganda used by pro-Rasputin supporters, ultra-royalists, and communist revolutionaries alike in order to suit their own political goals. However, more important than prophecies or healing powers, there is another legacy of Rasputin's that remains to this day. A great question that has yet to be answered. Was Rasputin's dick put in a pickle jar for 100 years?
Wait, what?
Well, if you're boring, you'd probably take the word of most historians saying that this was mostly a myth and simply leave it at that. But this is Mad Lads, and we leave no stone unturned,
Oh, God.
especially when we are talking about the stones of a mad monk. So the legend goes like this. After murdering Rasputin, Yusupov committed a final act of humiliation upon him by chopping Rasputin's dick off. Some people feel that Yusupov did this as a punishment for Rasputin sleeping with everyone's wives and daughters. However, one of Yusupov's servants was secretly a great admirer of Rasputin's, and she managed to smuggle the penis out from the estate.
What?
The penis would then repeatedly change hands, and hopefully they washed their hands afterwards, until the penis was rediscovered by Rasputin's own daughter when she was in Paris. That felt very wrong to say. She discovered that her father's now rotting penis was being used in rituals by French occultists who believed that it bestowed female fertility and male vitality. Super male vitality, you know, if you believe the rumours. She managed to reclaim her father's penis, but eventually she had to sell her father's penis to some French antique dealers in the 70s because she needed the money. This video took a left turn, didn't it? What a family heirloom that would have made. And to my dearest Abigail, I bequeath unto you my dick. 30 years later, a Russian man bought the now pickled penis for $8,000. He decided that this long and girthy specimen of Russian history needed to be properly preserved. So it now sits somewhere that it rightfully belongs. In full view of the public in the St. Petersburg Museum of Erotica. It is quite a fun day out. It's just not a family day out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I understand that Pringles can jokes will be made. And yes, upon my death, I would like my penis to be pickled in a jar and displayed to the public. Morty, look Morty, I'm pickled dick! I want to die.
Okay. That is the end of the video. Oh my god, that was even more crazy than I thought it was going to be. Alright. Let me know what you think of this video in the comment section. And until next time, I am out of here.